This is a story of absolute corruption, institutional injustice, and a cold-blooded cover-up. It is the story of an innocent 18-year-old boy who was forced to defend his life only to be railroaded by the very system sworn to protect us. Through malicious prosecution, witness intimidation, and catastrophic defense failures, the truth was buried deep. To understand why a prosecution team would actively bend the rules, you have to look at who is involved. In the matter of Brandon Schklar versus the state of Tennessee, Brandon was forced to defend himself. But this wasn't an ordinary case. The individual Brandon was defending himself against is the son of an active drug task force agent and a sheriff's officer within the very department that investigated the case. This department works hand in hand with the district attorney's office every single day. When a system investigates an incident involving the child of one of its own officers, the line between law enforcement and family protection completely erases. The institutional bias was baked into this case from day one. On December 4th, 2022, around 9:46 p.m., Lewisburg police were dispatched to a shooting call at 1000 Sherrill Drive. Upon arrival, officers found a 20-year-old male victim, identified as Ethan J. Miller, lying on the ground suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. First aid was administered at the scene, but tragically, he succumbed to his injuries, and Lewisburg detectives immediately began processing the evidence. During their initial investigation, detectives learned that Ethan had been involved in an ongoing dispute with another individual that began online and escalated throughout the day. Detectives identified 18-year-old Brandon Schklar as a primary suspect in the shooting. A short time later, detectives with the Lewisburg Police Department and the Marshall County Sheriff's Office contacted Brandon. He was taken into custody and transported to the Marshall County Jail, where he was formally charged with criminal homicide. Brandon himself was dealing with some mental health issues that needed to be dealt with. In fact, his family had repeatedly contacted the authorities to try to get Brandon some help before this incident ever took place. But on this evening, things got out of hand. Ethan and Brandon were going back and forth, threatening each other over a social media app, text messages, and phone calls. During the argument, Ethan told Brandon to, quote, "pull up." Brandon and his girlfriend drove over there, but Ethan didn't come out, so Brandon ended up going back home. A short time later, Ethan challenged Brandon again to pull up. This time when Brandon showed up before he even reached Ethan's house, Ethan ran up onto the car and pulled a gun on Brandon. That's when Brandon ended up shooting Ethan in self-defense and driving away from the scene. Brandon told detectives he shot Ethan because he pointed a gun to his head, and he was in fear for his and his girlfriend's life. Detectives report they did not find a gun on or around Ethan, so Brandon obviously wasn't shooting him in self-defense supposedly. They placed him on an astronomical $1.3 million bond and threw him into solitary confinement on a maximum security death row unit for 10 months before he was ever convicted of a crime. His lawyer told him that a not guilty plea meant waiting over 2 more years in that solitary cell just to get a trial date. Signing a 32-year plea deal was his only escape to the general prison population. Brandon's first defense attorney told Brandon he had no case. She advised him to sign a 32-year plea deal, telling him there was zero evidence to back up his story. She was paid $50,000, completely missed it. She had this life-saving evidence sitting right in her hands, but she failed to be diligent, never found it. The state thought once that plea was signed, the prosecution heavily cluttered the discovery disk with thousands of files and pages of completely irrelevant information. It was designed to be a needle in a haystack. They assumed after the sentencing they were home free. The defense attorney would file it away, that it would collect dust in a cabinet, and that nobody would ever look at the evidence hidden deep in the mass of cluttered files on that disk. They were wrong. After the state forced Brandon into a plea deal, his family demanded all files and evidence in the case. For 10 grueling months every single day, they painstakingly sorted through every hidden file, every byte of data. And what they uncovered completely shatters the state's case. They have found a 911 call. A neighbor standing in her front yard reported seeing an individual dressed in all black fleeing the scene, running behind a house across the street.
Marshall County Dispatch. Yes, ma'am. My name is Ashley on my street. I was standing out in the front yard, and I saw somebody run behind the house across the street from me. I don't know if they're looking for anybody. I just wanted to let y'all know that I saw somebody run back behind the house across the street from me, and it looked like they were in all black.
Okay, you live at 9?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't want to walk down there and interrupt them.
No, don't do that.
But I just see somebody take off running.
Okay, but you saw, it wasn't an officer, it was like an individual?
No. Yes, ma'am. They looked like they were running the direction of Yale Road.
Okay. Could you tell what they were wearing? You said all black?
I could not. It's dark, and they were running in the parts that were not lit, but it looked like they were in all black or all dark.
It wasn't Brandon or his girlfriend. They left in a vehicle. It wasn't Ethan. He was deceased in the street. So who was running? Also hidden inside that massive data dump, statements from two of Ethan's buddies given to police officers at night, who claimed to have spent most of the day with Ethan but left shortly before the shooting occurred. This timeline becomes highly critical when matched against the eyewitness who saw someone fleeing into the shadows immediately after the shots were fired. So, and both of the statements, they're kind of contradictory. This one says around 9:15 they were leaving. But when you look closer at the actual paperwork, the narrative begins to fracture. While this first statement puts their departure around 9 p.m., the second buddy statement shifts the timeline entirely, claiming they didn't leave until around 9:15 p.m. When a critical shooting occurs in a narrow window of time, a 15-minute discrepancy between two friends who claim to have been together isn't just a minor mistake. It is a glaring red flag. The family discovered police body cam footage showing those exact same two individuals arriving right back at the scene. They claimed to the officer on scene that Ethan's mother had called them to tell them what happened, which is why they came back. Take a close look at the individual on the left in the body cam footage. Notice anything interesting about what he's wearing? You guessed it, all black. While there is some white lettering on the front of his shirt, if you are running away into the darkness, that lettering is not something a witness would ever be able to see from behind. This places an individual matching the exact description of the fleeing suspect right back at the scene. This critical connection could finally answer one of the biggest mysteries of the investigation. What happened to the gun that Ethan pointed at Brandon? When investigators arrived, that weapon was nowhere to be found. Is it possible that one or both of these individuals removed the gun from the scene immediately after the shooting? It is certainly possible if the physical evidence can back it up. Let's look closely at this next piece of body cam footage from an officer investigating the blood patterns at the scene to see if we can answer that very question.
Okay, this doesn't make sense. Okay, yeah. We got too much blood over there and not enough over here. Alright. Well, I got a massive blood pile right there. And I got a blood trail going that way, and I got a blood trail going outward.
So that way?
I got a blood trail heading out, not in. Because, follow me so I can understand where you want to. Because I got, this is where he most likely got hit to begin with. A lot of blood, outward spurts, and he went that way. What doesn't make sense to me is I have very small trail marks heading
The
outward.
physical evidence tells a story that the prosecution actively suppressed. If Ethan's gun was dripping with blood when it was picked up and removed from the scene, it would leave a trail in that exact direction. And remember, the neighbor saw the runner fleeing in that very same direction. This perfectly explains why a trail of blood was found moving away from the body. It shows that a critical piece of evidence dripping with blood was removed from the scene and carried in the exact direction the runner was fleeing. Brandon had absolutely no idea this evidence even existed when he signed that plea deal. There are 7 separate police reports documenting this investigation. Across all 7 of those reports, there is not one single mention of the 911 call, the blood trail moving away from the body, or the runner fleeing the scene. This critical evidence was completely omitted and suppressed by the prosecution. What about Brandon's girlfriend, who was sitting right there in the car during the ambush? Did she see what happened? Let's take a look at her original statement to the police.
And Ethan walks down his driveway, and he's walking slow, and we're watching him. We're like, maybe he just wants to come get in the car and we're going to talk to him. Well, he gets to the end of his driveway, he takes off running to Brandon's car, and Brandon rolls down his window, and he sticks a gun in the window at Brandon's head. And the first thing Brandon did was grab his gun, I turned my head and dove to the floorboard, and Brandon set off like 5 shots. And I looked at, and then Brandon just stopped, and Ethan backed up, and he grabbed his chest, and...
What was his hand?
Because you're already saying he didn't have a gun, so what the hell am I supposed to fucking say? He did have a fucking gun. I seen it with my own fucking eyes.
You seen it with your
I
eyes?
seen it with my own fucking eyes, and y'all trying to say he didn't. He did have one, because Brandon wouldn't have shot his ass. I don't think my phone taken like this fucking situation, because it's not been talked about on my phone, nothing's been recorded, nothing's been said, nothing at all. Like, you have no idea, I cannot do this. I can't have my phone taken by the police, because I didn't do anything. There's no reason for y'all to have my shit.
You understand you can be charged too, right?
Yes, I understand that. But there's no reason, I don't have anything to do with this. I didn't talk about it to nobody, like nothing, absolutely not, nothing.
One, nobody's trying to tell you what to do.
No, nobody's told me what to say, none of that.
The second part is you seen Ethan stand at the side of the car and stick a gun in the window.
He ran up the car, stuck it in the window. That's what I told Julie, that's what I told everyone, and that's what the fuck happened.
The very next day, she was arrested, thrown into a jail cell, and faced threats of severe consequences. Investigators used the terrifying pressure of incarceration on a pregnant young woman to break her down. Because of that intense intimidation, she revised her statement, changing her story to say she didn't know if she actually saw a gun or not. The revised statement was the only statement left in the official file. The critical questioning, the hours of interrogation, and the intense pressure used to break down a pregnant witness buried deep in the massive data dump. The prosecution ensured that Brandon and his legal team were kept entirely in the dark, hiding the truth of how this evidence was manufactured. Buried deep inside the files of the massive data dump was another shocking piece of physical evidence found at the scene: walkie-talkies and flashlights. This wasn't a random, heat-of-the-moment confrontation. The presence of this gear strongly suggests a coordinated, tactical ambush. By communicating through walkie-talkies instead of cell phones, Ethan's buddies could stay in constant contact and coordinate their movements without leaving a digital footprint on cellular networks. But just like the blood trail and the fleeing runner, this critical evidence completely vanished when it came time to write the official narrative. Across all 7 police reports, there's not one single mention of the walkie-talkies or flashlights found at the scene. It was completely omitted from the paperwork, hidden deep within the discovery files where the prosecution hoped no one would ever think to look. The deception in this case goes all the way to the witness stand. The lead detective on the case, Detective Ramirez, didn't just omit this critical information from his written reports. He actively committed perjury during his official testimony. On the stand, Detective Ramirez testified that he only observed a blood trail moving in one single direction toward Ethan's house. He completely fabricated details to support his narrative while entirely omitting the second undeniable blood trail that moved away from the scene in the opposite direction. The cover-up didn't stop there. When specifically asked under oath if anyone else was seen fleeing the scene immediately after the shooting, Detective Ramirez's official testimony was a flat no. He stood before the court and lied, completely suppressing the neighbor's eyewitness account of the runner dressed in all black. By intentionally altering the physical layout of the crime scene and denying the existence of a fleeing suspect, Detective Ramirez engaged in outright perjury, ensuring the truth of the ambush would never be heard by a jury. To fight back, the family hired a second defense attorney, retaining him for $60,000 to file an appeal with the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals. But for $60,000, this attorney made a $6 mistake. He didn't just file it late. He filled the initial petition with catastrophic, disqualifying procedural errors that he never should have made. The family had to work incredibly hard to catch his mistakes and force a correction. They filed it again completely corrected, but by the time those legal blunders were fixed, the calendar had run out. The final petition was exactly 11 days past the statute of limitations. Because of that lawyer's catastrophic mistakes, the Court of Criminal Appeals denied the appeal on a technicality. They refused to even look at the merits of the case or the buried evidence. But wait, there's more. The corruption goes even deeper. In the DA's haste to dump unvetted data onto that discovery disk, they downloaded and distributed the cell phone contents of a witness that contained explicit, sexual images and video of an underage girl. The FBI currently has an active federal investigation open into those pictures, and the Tennessee Board of Professional Responsibility has an open case into the district attorney's actions. Yet, despite a federal investigation into the prosecution, Brandon remains locked away. He is autistic and serving 32 years without parole for defending his life against an armed ambush. The case is now before the Tennessee Supreme Court. If they refuse to look past that 11-day technicality caused by a negligent lawyer, an innocent young man will spend his life in prison just to protect the family of law enforcement officers.